Hello, I'm Micah Johnson, news director of WTOV's News 9. During the next half hour, you will see an exclusive interview which our Lisa Kick obtained with confessed killer Thomas Dillon. This interview took place yesterday, July 14th, at the Noble County Jail and is the only television interview obtained so far. Many of you may question why we have decided to do this in a half-hour format. Many of you have called the station and questioned whether Dillon has had enough media coverage already. Well, he has. However, we were given the opportunity to bring you face-to-face with Dillon, the man who has silently stalked and killed 5 people in our area. It may be disturbing to some of you, and we understand, but we also feel there are a lot of questions that went unanswered as to how any person could do what Dillon did. We are not glamorizing him. He's going to jail for the rest of his life for his crimes, and there's certainly nothing glamorous about that. We sometimes get complacent because we live in one of the safest communities in America. But what you're about to see is a killer who infiltrated that. And we hope it will serve as an increased incentive to support local law enforcement and the tough job they have ahead. This has been a media circus. And in many ways, News 9 has been in the center ring. But we didn't apply for the job. Dillon chose to confide in Lisa Kick. We'll let you draw your own conclusions. Again, this may be disturbing to some of you, and parents may wish to decide whether young children should view the program. Here now is Confessions of a Killer, a conversation with Thomas Dillon.
Hi, I'm Lisa Kick. For the past several weeks, Thomas Dillon has been in contact with me from the Noble County Jail in Caldwell, Ohio. He acted as though they were casual conversations, but on July 1st, the day before he told officials about his cold-blooded killings, he confessed to all 5 of the Outdoorsman murders to me. A psychological evaluation of this man shows the 43-year-old thrives on having control. He's been diagnosed with a severe personality disorder. Nonetheless, it's important to remember this man killed 5 men, ranging in age from 21 to 49. He shows very little remorse. In this next half hour, you'll hear Dillon talk about each one of the murders and what led him to kill.
Mr. Dillon, with respect to count 1 of the indictment in case number 93 CR 6, charging aggravated murder of Donald Welling, how do you plead?
Guilty. The first one was just 10 seconds. Just 10 seconds from start to finish. It wasn't premeditated. I told you guys that. I was just driving along and came up on him, and that's it. Welling. Just 10 seconds from start to finish.
What'd you do? You came up on him and...
I came up over in the isolated area and saw him walking along the road, and just, I heard a voice in my head said, open fire on him. And I did it in 10 seconds from the time I heard that voice till I shot him and killed him. Just 10 seconds. I just kept going. Like it was just like normal behavior, like nothing out of the ordinary, you know? Came home, like my wife said, you know, you didn't act out of the ordinary, just like normal. And I forgot about it after a few weeks. I don't know.
Case number 93 CR 5. That involves the death of Jamie W. Paxton. At this time, how do you plead to that indictment?
Guilty. Came up on him out of the blue. I didn't know he was there, and just in 45 seconds it was over, from start to finish. I just opened fire on him.
First shot hit where?
Chest.
Second shot?
Knee, and then third one in the butt.
Did you ever see his face?
Just from 100 feet away. I didn't know how old he was. He looked older. I don't know. That didn't cross my mind, you know. Just seconds, you know, just a period of seconds.
Mm-hmm. You got back in your truck.
Truck and left. Like, you know, nothing happened.
You went home.
In a roundabout way, I went home, I think, from there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember by what route, though. I'd never been down that road before. I didn't know he was going to be there. It just happened.
Was he there and he was in your way, or he was...
No, he was off the road 150 foot or so, and just, I don't know, heard a voice that day, too.
Had you been drinking?
Yes, heavy. First one I hadn't, though. Mm-hmm. Real heavy that day.
And so you went home?
Went home and just forgot about it. I don't know. Just didn't occur to me something happened. I don't know.
When you read it in the paper?
I read it in the plain dealer about 10 days later. I didn't know how old he was till then. Just a little story about, you know, maybe 2 column inches or so.
You saw his age. He was 21.
Saw his age. I thought, man, that couldn't be, you know. I thought maybe it was a misprint, like 31 maybe. And I researched it further and I found out, you know, he was 21. So.
And in 1990, your son was how old?
1990, he was just short of 10.
Did that affect you? You thinking about your own son and someone else's son being shot?
No, not really. Just I thought how young he was, that's all. It just affected me. That's all. You know, it's the start of his life, and it's gone because of me. You know, that's what affected me.
How does that make you feel?
It was terrible. What do you think? You know, just he had everything going for him, and that's, you know, because of me, it's all gone. You know?
Do you think about that nightly, daily?
No, not now. No, it's, you know, I think of them as a group, not as, you know, individuals now. Just, you know, they're all 5 of them are gone because of me. You know?
No remorse?
I have a lot of remorse. Sure I do. It didn't come out yesterday, and when they interviewed me, it didn't come out either. You know, just, you know, I don't want to be here. You think I want to be here?
Are you remorseful because you're going to be in jail the rest of your life, or are you remorseful because you took 5
remorseful
people's...
for everything, you know, just I'll ruin all those people's lives. I'm here, my family's suffering, you know, just, it didn't need to happen. You know, it just did, though. You know, it just did. You know, I still trying to figure out why. A lot of times I wake up in the morning and think, you're late for work, you know. I don't realize where I'm at. I think, you should go to work today. And I realize, you know, what am I in here for? I don't need to be in here. 365 days out of the year, 364 days out of the year, I'd be all right out in society. That one day, though, I could kill somebody, you know, and you can't predict when.
If they let you out of here.
It could be, I could go to work, I'd be fine. But that one day out of the year, you know, I'd probably lose control and it'd be all over.
What would happen?
Probably kill somebody again. Probably kill somebody again. It would happen. It would have to happen.
With respect to count 2 of that indictment, charging aggravated murder of Kevin Loring, how do you plead to that count of the indictment?
Guilty.
I don't know. I was out deer hunting in the morning, and I quit about 10:30, bought some beer and just started driving around, ended up in that area, and just, there he was. It just happened. It just happened.
Count number 2 in that case of that indictment involving the death of Claude Hawkins. How do you plead to count 2 at this time of the indictment in case number 93 CR4?
Guilty.
Just driving around, I heard a voice that day that said, go back and get him. I saw him fishing down there. I heard a voice in my head say, go back and get him. Went down there and killed him. Shot him right in the back.
Didn't know him?
Never knew any of these people before. Never knew their names. Only one of them said something to me. It was Welling, the first one. He said, what's up? Just before I shot him. It was from me to you. He was 5 feet away.
Him saying something that didn't trigger anything in you?
No, he said, what's up? And I killed him right there on the spot. That's the only person I ever got close to talk to me.
Nothing clicked?
Not at that time, no. Now it does. I think, you know what, you know, this guy was just trying to be friendly and you blew, you know, killed him, you know. I don't know. I don't know.
The aggravated murder charge involving the death of Gary Bradley. How do you plead?
Guilty.
Drove by him, he waved at me. I stopped, got out of my truck, got up on this little hill opposite where he was fishing, shot him in the back twice. I don't know why. Just happened. Just happened. I don't know.
You weren't under the influence for all of these?
No, just 3, I think. 3 out of 5, I believe. I don't know why.
Nothing triggered. Gary Bradley sitting there fishing.
Standing fishing, right?
You're standing fishing.
You know, none of these people, you know, antagonized me or did anything to, you know, I didn't know them. You know, I didn't rob them. I didn't, you know, sexually molest them. I didn't do anything. I didn't know them, you know. Just, it happened. I don't know why. That's why people think of me as a monster. They look at me, I'm fairly normal looking and talk normally, but, you know, that's just on the outside. On the inside, I was out of control.
Everybody wants to know why.
I don't know why. I don't know why. That's the big mystery here.
Why outdoorsmen?
I don't know why. Probably because they were accessible. You know, why men? Very few women go out alone fishing or hunting or whatever. I don't know why. I don't know why. I don't know.
Never had the urge for women?
I never saw any women out there. No, not really.
You said it started with small animals. You even said yourself a few moments ago it was groundhog. You were groundhog hunting. And
Right. Well, they just think it naturally progressed where it didn't make any difference to me whether it was a dog or a groundhog or a deer or a man. I don't know. I don't know.
It's all the same. It was all a target.
That's what they think. I don't know. They're going to have to figure this out later. I don't know.
What about setting fires, the arson fires?
They say that's part of the pattern. That's what leads up to finally you kill people. I don't know. Like a destructive bend or something. I don't know.
What'd you do, just go out and...
Destroy about anything in my path.
How'd you do it?
Just throw a match in there. You know, they're right along the road and just, they're out in the boondocks and just destroyed them.
You didn't think that was strange?
Not really. Not really. You know, it just seemed like normal behavior. You know, you don't know the way my mind was going at that time, though. It just, all this just seemed like, well, you know, it doesn't seem that abnormal to me. And I'd come home and do normal things and, you know, go to work and, you know, I was able to function. I thought, you know, you can't be that out of whack here. I know it's hard to believe, you know, I know it's hard to believe, but that's the way my mind was working at that time.
This is a man in his 40s.
Well,
doing
late
these
30s
things.
when I started.
Late 30s.
Right. Yeah, that's what, sometimes I think to myself, you know, this, not everybody in Ohio is doing this today. You know, I'm on a Saturday cruising around buying beer. I said, you know, you're unique. You know, but it wouldn't strike me as, you know, stop this, you know. There'd never be, as, you know, a voice in my head saying, you got to stop this, go seek treatment or something. It just never struck me.
You just said a moment ago, you're unique. Do you like that? You're known now as the Ohio Outdoorsman killer.
No, I didn't want this. I don't want this. You know, look what it's done to my, look what it's done to my family. You know, it's ruined everything.
Do you look at what it's done to the other families?
Yeah, I think about them. But, you know, it's too late now. What can I do now? Most of them hate my guts, you know, and what can you do? You call them up and apologize, they're just going to hang up on you, you know, what can you do? I'll talk to them personally. I told you that. If they want to come here, Mrs. Paxton, Mrs. Bradley, face to face, I'll talk to them, one at a time.
What would you say to them?
If they want to know any answers, I'll tell them, you know.
Mrs. Paxton would ask you why you shot her son.
Well, I'll tell her, you know. Tell her I was just out of control for probably the last 4 or 5 years, that's all. You know, she said, Mrs. Paxton said, why didn't he go get help, meaning me? Because I didn't know, you know. It's not like you have a broken arm where you realize you're hurt, you know, just, I was so out of control I didn't realize it. I can't make it up to him. They're going to have to live with it like I'm going to have to live with it, I don't know.
How are you going to live with this for the rest of your life?
I'm going to have to, I don't know.
What do you do to get through the day?
Yeah, just normal activities, you know. I don't really dwell on this a whole lot, you know. I don't think of it every hour in the hour or anything. I think about it, you know, in a general sense, you know, what are you doing here? You know, you don't, you know, I said, you shouldn't be here, but you need to be here. You know what I mean? It's like conflicting desires. Like, you need to be incarcerated, but, you know, I wish I were out. I talk to my wife, and she talks about doing things and going on vacations. I think, well, I sure like to be with him, but I can't anymore. It's just, you know, I need to be incarcerated for the rest of my life just to keep me out of trouble.
Some of them think you like the media attention.
I don't. I would have called you up the first day if I would have called up every TV and said, hey, come on over and interview me. I want to, you know. I could have done that in Stark County Jail. They were there the second night I was arrested. They wanted to interview me. I said, no. No. It's been, what, 7 or 8 months? It's the first time I've ever been on camera.
Why'd you talk so openly with me and then confess to me on the phone the day before you told authorities?
You seem like a trustworthy person. I don't know. Why do people do things? I don't know. Like I told you on the phone, it's easier to talk to a stranger than your own relatives or your attorney, you know? It's, you know, like talking to a priest. You can confess a stranger, but not to you know, somebody you've known. I don't know.
What do you want to tell people?
In general?
Mm-hmm.
They find it hard to believe that someone that looks as normal as me would do something like that. You know, they're fearful of me because, if I said if I had shot my wife, they could understand that, and there wouldn't be any, you know, any interest in this, because that happens all the time. But 5 strangers I didn't even know, you know, that's why they're fearful. That could have been them. That's why. They just don't understand, and they never will. And neither will I, probably. It just happened. I don't know. Like I said, I didn't want to do that. It was like a compulsive, involuntary act. I didn't go out of my way to do it. You know, I just did it. It just happened. I didn't really plan on doing any of those. I didn't go out at 8 o'clock in the morning, go out in my truck and say, I'm going to kill somebody today. I didn't do it. They happened. It was spur of the moment things.
You once said you meet the definition of a serial killer. You really believe that?
No, technically I do. Said 4 or more victims over a period of time, I believe it is. Technically I do, but I don't feel like, you know, I don't feel like I did anything, really. That's why I find it so hard to even, you know, like, well, had nothing to say yesterday. I just didn't feel like, you know, I didn't do this. I still don't, in the back of my mind, I don't feel I did this, you know. But I know I did, you know. It's hard for me to accept this, because it's not like me to do things like this, you know.
You have a superior IQ. Your IQ scores are very high. What went wrong? What happened?
I don't know why. I don't know why. They think I was just a chronic underachiever for my entire life, and possibly I became bitter about that and just created a fantasy life that would meet my expectations, and these shootings became part of it, I think. That's what they think. I was in like a fantasy world when I was driving around drinking, and just, I came up with these people, and they became part of my fantasy, and they're, you know, I killed them. That's what they think might have happened with these victims. It was something else that happened to me, then I came up on them while I was thinking about these other incidents and took it out on them. They were there. They were in the wrong place at the wrong time. I don't know.
They were in the wrong place at the wrong time.
Wrong place at the wrong time. You know, that's all. It's the only way they were killed. You know, they were just in the wrong place at the wrong, you know, time of the morning or early afternoon when I was in a state of mind where, it's, you know, I took it out on them. That's all. I said, there's no reason for me to do that. I didn't know these people.
Never afraid of getting caught?
Never crossed my mind. If I would have been afraid of getting caught, everybody kept saying, why did you sell that gun after you shot that 5th victim? That doesn't make sense. If they wouldn't have had that gun, they wouldn't have a case against me.
You sold it the day of?
The day of April 5th, 1992, when I shot Gary Bradley. 3 hours later, I sold it at a gun show. And the dealer lived 2 miles away from me, and he knew me. And if I would have been trying to deceive someone, I would have kept the gun or thrown it in the river or something. I killed Hawkins and Bradley with that gun, the last 2 victims. They said, how could you be so, my attorney said, how could you be so stupid as to do so? That's the only piece of evidence they had against me. When they arrested me after Thanksgiving, they had nothing on me on these cases. They just had that federal case, which was garbage. And they went on a fishing expedition and turned up this rifle. And they said, you know, how could anybody be that stupid? You know? They think either I wanted to be caught, is what they think. You know, I was tempted, you know, I would get riskier and riskier with each of these shootings. Finally, the 5th one, I did this outrageous thing to get caught, is what they think. That's their theory. I wanted to get caught. That's their theory. I don't know if it's true or not.
Why did you agree to the plea bargain?
It's better all around. They got their 5 cases. I get to go to a place where I can maintain contact with my family. Everybody's happy, fairly happy.
You escaped the death penalty.
So that didn't make any difference to me. Death row didn't bother me. It was just no phone calls. No contact visits and no phone calls. Death row didn't bother me. That didn't bother me going there. I told him that.
Does death bother you?
Not death, lethal injection or electrocution doesn't. That didn't really bother me. It was just a lack of contact with my family, like I said, and no contact visits, no phone calls. That's it. That didn't bother me.
If they hadn't arrested you, would you have gone for help?
No. I didn't know I needed help. It took something like this to bring me to a screeching halt before I realized it. It took me 3 or 4 months in jail before I realized that I was the one that did it. When they arrested me, I didn't realize what they wanted. And I didn't realize that that's what they were arresting me for. And it didn't strike me for a long time. It took me a long time. That you actually did this, you know? I didn't even think about it for weeks and months in Stark County Jail in Painesville. I just didn't think about it.
Are these the only 5?
It's the only 5 I killed, right?
No more?
No more.
What about the tuck shooting?
I don't know what happened that day either. It was just driving on the road, and I was out groundhog hunting, had a rifle with me, heard a voice that said, I saw him in the window, heard a voice that said, stop, back up, and shoot him. Open fire on him. That's what I did. Oh.
But you didn't kill him.
No, I didn't.
Did you want to?
I don't know. It's aimed dead center. The window deflected the bullet. So if that would have been a different kind of bullet, or he would have been sitting a different way, it probably would have killed him. I don't know. I don't know.
What did you do between 1980, though, and...
My wife said, you know, how could that be that 9 years you didn't do anything? I said, it's probably because Johnny was born, our son. He was born in December of 80, and I was really involved in his care when he was younger, and for 5 or 6 years, that's probably what kept me occupied. I don't know, kept me from going off the deep end. I don't know.
How do you explain killing 5 people to your 12-year-old son?
He doesn't believe it yet. I asked him on the phone, I said, do you believe Daddy would do something like that? He said, no, you don't act like that. You know, why would you do something like that? You know, it's not the way he knows me, you know. Even the people at work, they said, you know, why would you do something like that? That's not like you, you know.
Did you admit to your son that, yes, indeed,
no,
Johnny, I did
not
this?
yet, not yet.
Are you going to do that?
It's going over his head now. He's just starting 7th grade. It's going to be hard for him to handle. I don't know. He had trouble in school. That really bothered me because people come up to him in school last year in 6th grade and they said, you know, did your dad kill all those people? And just really gave him a hard time. And, you know, he really suffered because of this. It was really tough. So.
How is your family reacting to this? You have a wife that stood by you.
She was there yesterday, and she wanted to be there. Everybody advised her not to be there, but she's glad she went. I called her last night. She said, well, obviously you're not coming home ever, and at least we'll be able to talk to you on the phone and come see you once in a while.
Anything you're afraid of? You afraid of anything?
At this time of my life, what more can they do to me? They're going to put me away for the rest of my life, whatever length of time that would be. I don't know. You know, what is there to fear now? I don't know.
If you had the past several years to live over again, what would Thomas Dillon do to change that?
I wish I could turn back the clock. You know, just look what happened, you know. Ruined my life, ruined my family's life, ruined 5 other families' lives. How many people? 50 or 75 people that are suffering now because of me? I don't know. You know, I wish I could turn back the clock. You can't. You know, hindsight is 20/20, as they've said.
Thomas Dillon will spend the rest of his life behind bars. Some say justice has been served, while others say it shouldn't have ended until Dillon was put in the electric chair. But regardless of what you think, Dillon can kill no more. I'm Lisa Kick.
Benny, move back out. Back off this side, please. Back off this side. Thomas, did you kill Jamie Paxton? Move back. What do you say to Jamie's mother?
Stand back.
Stand back.
He shot my son 3 times. He doesn't even have the intestinal fortitude to stand up and tell the families that he has any remorse. You know, I know he's not sorry for what he did.
Mr. Dillon, with respect to count 1 of the indictment in case number 93 CR 6, charging aggravated murder of Donald Welling, how do you plead? Guilty.